America's supposed to work, and clearly it's flawed. There's so many flaws, but we're working on those flaws, and we're angry, but we're trying to make things better, then we're on the right track. When we're looking at those flaws, we're just trying to break everything down and create division and distrust, then that's not a well-meaning actor, right? That's not somebody who's sincerely part of this process. That's what somebody that's just involved in trying to grab power.
That is Professor Kate Starbird. She is one of the lead researchers with the Election Integrity Partnership. Professor Starbird, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Tomorrow on Morning Edition, voters in Texas were asked to write postcards to President Trump as part of a nationwide project on what motivates voters. Some were glowing, others were not.
You will go down in history as the greatest man to create effectual change for all mankind.
You just had to turn a major pandemic into a political circus.
Listen tomorrow morning by asking your smart speaker to play NPR or your member station by name. You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
You might think of elections as happening on only one day, but early voting started in September in some places, and the campaigns began long before 2020. Hi, it's Rachel Martin. Elections are years-long marathons. That's why Morning Edition is always here to update you on the election news you need to know when you need to know it. So stick with us. Listen to Morning Edition from NPR News every day. 4 to 9 a.m. on KPBS.
I'm Eric Anderson from KPBS News. If you're currently a member of KPBS, whether you give every month or every year, I just want to take a moment to say thank you. We sincerely appreciate your contribution to keep the news from down the block and around the world on the air. Not just for you, but for everyone in San Diego. Quite simply, KPBS would not be possible without your support. Thank you.
I'm Janine Herbst with these headlines. The Texas Supreme Court today rejected a Republican request to throw out more than 120,000 early ballots in the Democratic-leading Harrison County. The measure will be heard at an emergency hearing in federal court tomorrow. In Belarus, anti-government protesters defied threats of a police crackdown and took to the streets for another weekend of demonstrations. Hundreds were arrested. Now the country's president says he will resort to harsh measures 12 weeks after a disputed election. And Tropical Storm Eta is now the 28th named storm in the Atlantic this season. It's in the Caribbean and is expected to become a hurricane tomorrow before reaching the coast of Nicaragua and Honduras on Tuesday. I'm Janine Herbst, NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Capital One, offering reimagined banking to fit people's lives, like Capital One cafes, where customers can grab coffee, bank, and chat with an ambassador. What's in your wallet? More at CapitalOne.com. And from the NPR Wine Club, offering its 50th anniversary Prosecco in celebration of half a century of NPR. Available to adults 21 years or older. Learn more at nprwineclub.org.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Michelle Martin. The alarming surge of coronavirus cases this fall has not been limited to the U.S. Several European nations have seen spikes too. Italy has responded by preparing new targeted lockdowns, but there's been intense pushback, some of it fueled by the far right and organized crime. NPR's Sylvia Poggioli has this report.
A week ago, the government ordered bars and restaurants to close at 6 p.m. and shut down cinemas, theaters, and gyms. The first pushback came from inside Rome's central prison as inmates banged against cell bars, an ominous echo of prison protests during the first lockdown in March when family visits were canceled. Those protests quickly led to the release of elderly mafia bosses serving long terms in isolation. Giuseppe Antocci, head of a mafia research center, says mob bosses were behind the get-out-of-jail ploy, which severely damaged the government.
The prison protests were all part of an orchestrated effort that also aimed at destabilizing the government, and it almost succeeded.
In Naples last week, violent clashes broke out between police and protesters. Officials believe 4 Camorra clans, the local mafia, directed the protests. Antocci says mob bosses are exploiting people's frustration over the pandemic.
The aim is to make the government seem indifferent to people's suffering and to make the mafia seem as their benefactor.
After being widely praised for its handling of the first lockdown, the government is now the target of protests from the entire spectrum of Italian society. Restaurant owners in chef hats organized this protest in Rome. They laid on the cobblestones white linen tablecloths with elegant settings. Their posters proclaimed, "We want to work," and "The new restrictions harm us." The tune played on the trumpet signaled fear that their businesses are close to death. On Saturday, the mood is less glum in Campo dei Fiori. It's 3 p.m. and a few young people are enjoying an early aperitivo at the pub, The Drunken Ship. In 3 hours, it will close. Manager David Houston says business is very bad, 10% of what they made pre-pandemic.
Normally we have maybe 6,000-7,000 students in Rome study abroad. This year we have 100 total, so it's like a complete nightmare.
Minutes later, the square is lined with police. In the center, a crowd of people gather. Many are dressed in black and wear hoods. David Di Stefano takes the loudspeaker. We're here to say no to more lockdowns, he says. We want to take back our country and send